Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Elisa Sklar, and I am the VP of Marketing for GIS Planning. I am really delighted to have with us here today some guests. You can see two of them. We're having some tech issues with our third guest, but he is joining us, and we'll have him here in a moment. So thrilled to have with us here today Danielle Casey, the Executive Vice President from the Greater Sacramento Economic Council in California. Rod Crider, who'll be joining us in a moment, the President of Rowan EDC in North Carolina. And Sjostrom, the President of Galveston Economic Development Partnership in Texas. Hello, everyone. Nice to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. And before I actually turn this over to our panelists, so what we're going to do today is we are going to hear from them one at a time, and then we're going to have some interaction. I'm going to encourage you guys to ask some questions. We'll be spending a little bit of time doing that. So I am going to start us off here with Danielle. I'm going to hand the controls over to you, Danielle, and you are going to be our presenter, and you can start us off and tell us a little bit about what is going on in Sacramento.
Uh-oh, are you sure you want to hand me those controls? Just kidding. All right, let me just get in charge really quick. First of all, hello everybody. Thank you for joining. I've got a nice little blue screen. At first I forgot to wear the jacket and I realized I looked like a floating head, which was kind of awesome. I almost stuck with that for the day, but then I decided to break it up a little bit, based on my choice of blouse. I don't know about all of you, but some days for programs like this, I actually have to put on the heels just so I feel like a professional and I'm in it. So, all right, hopefully this will come up full screen in just a second for you guys. So I'm just gonna be as brief as possible, but wanted to share with everyone just a few thoughts and things that we are doing in Greater Sacramento. I would love if I could do a live poll, so I'm just gonna do a pretend live poll on who knows where Sacramento is and where Greater Sacramento is. For some reason, coming out here 2 years ago, I realized that not a lot of people did. But we are the capital region of California, about 90 minutes northeast of San Francisco. You're all welcome to come anytime. So one of the things I wanted to just commiserate with everybody on is, has anybody experienced this? This is really what's been going on for us. And again, hence my whole point in trying to, get dressed every day and get the heels on and try to feel like I'm operating as an adult, which has been interesting and exciting on its own. So I'm just going to run through really quickly a few things that we've been doing as a regional organization to try to support our community. I'm sure that we'll have some consistencies among the group today, and then and I'm going to learn a lot from them as well. So very quickly, we hit all of this, ended up at home. We're trying to figure out how to manage our teams remotely. And we've got a mixture of, my CEO who couldn't figure out Zoom, and then millennials who are, on TikTok all the time and doing crazy things. So once we sorted that out, then we realized that if nothing else, we needed to be a go-to source of information. And there's so much noise. And as you all are, I'm sure, getting about 43 webinar requests a day, experts from every end of the country and the world telling us what's going on with trends. So we started tracking just the top forecasts and creating a central source of information. I don't think there's any economic development agency that doesn't have a toolkit website up, but we stood up 2 different web pages, and I'm happy to share the other one. We stood up a public page, a COVID-19 toolkit for small businesses and other people, and we also started a practitioners page that was really more internal information we'd only be sharing with economic development practitioners in our region. And we serve a 6-county region with 6 counties and then 14 municipalities. So you have 20 public sector partners, about 2.5 million. So serving as that central source and creating those 2 interfaces, the practitioners page is password protected, but we could put things in there like, opinions and webinar recordings and things like that from partners that we didn't necessarily want to share publicly, or that the general public or business community wouldn't really know what to do with. One of the other things that we did as we sat back and tried to figure out, okay, great, how are we using data and what are we doing to support the business community, knowing that we can't write checks. We can all try to get involved in advising on PPP and EIDL loans, and And we did that to some extent, but we immediately launched up Size Up. And well, I know it's certainly got a history with GIS planning for sure, which to me, there's such complementary tools and such great data. While I know they are separate companies now, to me, it's very, very seamless in having these and also having GIS planning on our website. So we launched Size Up. We did a lot of promotion around that. And when we launched Size Up on our website to help small businesses, after I think within the first week, I think first 4 days, it was our most visited web page in the past 6 months on our website. So that was a huge benefit and really impressive. At the same time, we also started promoting the COVID layers that planning was for.
For 1 second, I may be getting some, if you're wearing a mic, we might be getting some interference maybe from your hair on your microphone. Is that, you're not wearing one?
I'm not wearing a mic, so I don't think it's me.
Okay, no problem. Sorry to cut you off. Please continue. Go ahead.
No worries. I love that you think I would have a mic though, because I have a blue backdrop and I'm all into the look and feel. I actually do have a mic. I'm just not using it today. Anyway, so we also launched an online business survey, and this was through the task force that was created with Blame Canada. So we have a little over 500 responses right now. We just launched it a week ago. So we're working to see how we can collect data there. And we did a lot of webinars. I don't know who else has, everybody virtually raise your hand for me, but I have such a, I shouldn't be saying this as I speak in a webinar. I have webinar fatigue from watching webinars and hearing about webinars. And I'd say more so than webinars, really Zoom meetings. There have been, I think I've been averaging about 6 to 8 Zoom meetings a day. On the flip side, what an unbelievably productive way to communicate with our constituents. So we've done everything from launching our Size Up business tool to bringing in, I mentioned experts before. On our board, we have experts in the banking industry, in the healthcare industry. So we were able to get the heads of all of our hospitals and institutions to get on a webinar and talk to our constituents about what they see going on, hear from trusted colleagues on their guidance and perspective, and also hear from banking experts about what was really going on, especially this was a few weeks ago when everybody was in the full throes of trying to figure out how to apply for it and how to get it PPP in their first versions. But we also haven't slowed down. We did regional tours and pitches, and we held our first virtual familiarization tour. This is a picture of the box that I packed in my kitchen and sent to a group of national site selection consultants. It's amazing how they'll give you their home addresses when you're sending gifts. Just a little hint. Not that I would ever use that for anything untoward. And if anybody's, maybe we can cut that out of the recording. Just kidding. Anyway, but we packed up some gifts. We did a great virtual tour, and everyone has been really accommodating and amazing in engaging with us and staying on task. And we're seeing, I think in general, I know we're going to talk about this later, but we're seeing tremendous deal flow and activity, and the people we've been trying to get at have been even more accessible than ever. So that's been a positive boon. And in the meantime, we're also trying to figure out how do we help our businesses and companies actually reopen. And so we just got news yesterday out here in California, at least, that Newsom is allowing us to start doing a slow phase in. So that's pretty exciting. What I've been telling my economic development friends around the country through all of this, because I've been trying to match the number of happy hours with the boring Zoom calls. And so on some of the happy hours I've had with friends and colleagues, I kept telling everybody in the first month, out in California, we were about 2 to 3 days ahead of everybody in terms of all the shutdown processes. So hopefully we'll try to match you guys on the reopening. And I will stop there so we can get to our other folks.
Danielle, thank you. That is fantastic. I really appreciate that. I love the care package in the box and the quick kind of rally into doing things differently, because we are doing things differently than we were before. Thank you. So, Rod, it's a pleasure to see you here on screen. I'm going to pass the baton over to you. I want to make sure that I can hear you. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
We can. We have audio and video. Fantastic.
Excellent. Sorry about that. And thank you for inviting me today. Really appreciate the opportunity to share our experience here in Rowan County. We are part of the Charlotte Metro region, one of the northern counties in our region. And like Danielle has been saying, we've been experiencing a lot of things like zoomed out. I can definitely relate to that. But we had to, I guess here and like everywhere else, it hit pretty hard and pretty fast. And we had to really move pretty quickly to a kind of a different mode of operating, which was a total focus on assisting our existing businesses. That became our top priority very early on. And then we found that in order to do that, we had to become a convener and a collaborator with other organizations, really every organization in town that had some interest in helping move our community forward through this. So we've spent a lot of time working with other groups, talking with them, figuring out solutions. And then the third part, and I guess Danielle was kind of speaking to this at all the webinars and Zoom meetings we're on, was just we're trying to anticipate the changes that are coming and interpret what we were hearing, and then being able to deliver resources to our local businesses that were available. It was the proverbial drinking from the water hose. The information was coming so fast, and there was so much of it. It really, I think, tested everybody's resolve, especially those first 2 or 3 weeks. So some of the ways that we've assisted our existing businesses is we were like Danielle and probably Jeff too. We were on a roll. We had lots of projects going. Our pipeline was full. Our biggest issue was finding workers for all the expanding companies in the area. We had just launched our 5-year funding campaign for our organization, and that all kind of came to a stop, and we had to refocus on something entirely different. Again, it was trying to understand and interpret what was going on, and then communicate that to the rest of the people out there. And while the EDC is primarily focused on the traded sectors of our community, and that seemed to be for us the least affected part of our economy. And they have mostly concerns about securing PPE. Was their supply chain solid? Were their workers going to show up to work, or because they were fear of the virus? But in terms of, they had plenty of business. It was just, could they carry on and move forward with the book of business that they already have? And one of the other things that the virus kind of made us move towards was helping small businesses. And this isn't an audience we're used to dealing with. We're not used to working with Main Street and small businesses in our community. But again, it hit us so hard, so fast. We also participated in Air Canada's BRE survey group, and we lost 30% of our businesses by March 30th. They were closed, and most of those were the smaller businesses. And so we were looking for every way that we could to help them. And one of them was, and here comes the commercial plug, was for Zoom Business. That was made available to us about a week ago. Maybe we started it, I learned about it, and you guys had us up and going in a day. It's been a great tool for us to help the small businesses. We've been a really good response to that, and people are appreciative of that. Again, it's not really our audience, but it is demonstrating to them our concern and our leadership and our ability to offer resources that we had available to us to the rest of the community. I would say that, in our group, in our community, everything is kind of in separate silos. We have a separate EDC, we have a separate chamber, we have a separate tourism group, we have a separate downtown development group. But we did all come together, and we kind of established a division of labor pretty early on, figuring out who would do what groups would you talk to, what groups would I talk to, how could we get back together and compare notes. We did put together an economic resource guide, which many communities are doing. We all contribute to that on pretty much a daily basis. We recently convened last week an economic recovery task force to help us transition back to a reopening mode. We are closed down here until Friday. Hopefully on the 9th, we get the word from the governor to be able to move forward into phase 1 of 3 phases of reopening in North Carolina. Our county commissioners also convened a group. We have daily briefings. 130 people from across the community get together on a Zoom call like this every morning at 9:30 to compare notes. How are we doing? What are the health issues? What are the economic issues? That's been really really helpful and key to, I think, getting everybody to work together. And then, as I mentioned, we joined up with Eric Canada and his group, and we're staying in group with our workforce development partners. I mean, many of them they can't visit the workplaces, and so many of them are struggling with things to do. But we anticipate that that's still going to be an issue when we come out of this. And then just talking about the marketing effort, the whole place marketing issue, and how do we adjust to those? That's become a top concern for us. Again, we're attending all these meetings, trying to figure out, like everybody else, where that may be going. We want to be better informed and how we can prepare ourselves for whatever is coming. One of our assumptions is that the business attraction and site selection will be paused, as it is now, maybe for a while, but the conventional thinking at this point seems to point towards a kind of a rapid recovery, and things could happen very quickly, maybe not, but we are preparing for the very quickly scenario, and we hope that that happens. So we're looking at our messaging and positioning. We're in a metro area of Charlotte, but we're the northernmost county, so we need to be talking about, we have a less dense population. It's a safer environment. Will that resonate with people coming out of this? Or do we need to be focusing on the industries that people are predicting that will grow as a result of this? Like, for instance, the life sciences, that hasn't been a target of ours in the past. And then the whole supply chain issue, are some of our employers going to demand that their suppliers be closer to them, and do we need to be able to accommodate them, and will we be prepared? So we're working on our sites. We're still working on certifying some of our sites right now so that we're ready for that. We have reached out to the site selection consultant community. Also, we sent out 60 packages of locally crafted brew to the Site Selectors Guild members. They all seem to like that, although Danielle, I didn't think about getting their home address, so I'll try that next time for sure, because I'm sure some of them are sitting on a desk or
they're all working at home
somewhere, right? So they're not getting to enjoy it, but they did seem to enjoy that quite a bit. And then our project pipeline is still very strong. We're working projects. We've got 2 calls tomorrow with some prospects. We've had some incentives approved by our local governing bodies. So we're very much going forward with that. We're trying to assess what companies will require or desire suppliers to be closer to them. Like I said, we're talking to those folks and say, who do you need closer to you? Who do we need to be talking to help you out? And then, like everybody else, I think we're exploring a new technology that, for us at least, a technology that's out there, and how do we use it to do things differently going forward. So that's kind of where we're at. We're just we expect there's going to be more digitalization. There's going to be less personal contact. There's going to be more cleanliness standards. Those are issues for us internally as an organization that we need to manage. And we're also working with our communities for them to figure out maybe how they move forward as well at the same time. So that's where we're at in Rowan County.
Thank you so much. That's it's very interesting to hear. I'm always, as we've been doing these EDO roundtables, very interesting for me to hear the kind of parallels and the distinctions, because every area has its unique, characteristics, obviously, but there's a lot of commonalities as well. So that's very interesting to me. Thank you. Jeff, tell us about Galveston. I know you and I had a very interesting conversation about a week and a half ago about certainly in Galveston, you guys have dealt with disaster in the past, haven't you?
Yeah, we sure have. And thank you so much for inviting us to participate today. When we were talking, we talked a little bit about our involvement with disaster preparedness began back in 2005 when Hurricane Rita came ashore into Louisiana and the central Gulf Coast. And the mayor of Galveston came to our organization and said, we need to learn some lessons. We have a history of natural disasters being on the Gulf Coast with our great 1900 storm that decimated this island. But we took the opportunity and really focused on both business recovery and community recovery. And if you think about the last decade to 15 years, we had Katrina, Rita. At the time, it was kind of like the trifecta that we have today. When Hurricane Ike came ashore, we had the stock market collapse and the housing collapse nationally. almost to the day of Hurricane Ike in 2008. Between Ike and Katrina, we had the Horizon oil spill. We had Hurricane Harvey that hit our region just a couple of years ago, back in 2017. And now we've got the COVID-19, which ironically, oil and gas, the stock market are all being hit at the same time. The real positive thing is now we're 5 weeks out from this year's storm season, and folks are already predicting a more active hurricane season for this year, and the Gulf of Mexico is already 5 degrees warmer than it should be at this time of year. With that said, it's in our bloodline for business continuity, disaster preparedness, thinking about tools and resources. Between 2008 and 2012, through our organization, we facilitated somewhere over $100 million in business recovery resources that we were able to inject back into the Galveston business community. As we look at COVID-19, it's a little different animal because it's impacting every one of us, and it is truly global. And so fortunately, because of our training and the work that we've done through the years, we actually started on March 8th with the phone calls to our local lenders. It was on a Sunday. And the question that I posed to them was, are we going to reactivate the most successful program we had after Hurricane Ike, which was a business recovery loan program where our local banks agreed to come together and not compete. And they offered short-term fixed interest rate loans to the local businesses for recovery purposes to serve as gap financing between the hit of the event and when insurance or SBA or other resources would become available. Back in 2008, they relent over $40 million into our business community at the time that they needed it the most. March 11th is when the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo was canceled. And it was really that week and the following week where the shutdown really began. Our community, we're a small coastal community of 50,000 people. We've got 3 primary sectors in education and healthcare. We have the largest state teaching hospital in the state of Texas on Galveston Island. We have tourism, which is a full third. We're a huge tourism economy. And then we've got the maritime industry. We've got a 45-foot depth port. We are the closest proximity to the open waters. And those 3 sectors really comprise, and actually, as we've seen through this COVID event, have created a backstop that has ironically helped to shelter us a little bit from some of the devastating impacts that we've seen around the country with other communities. Tourism, we are the largest cruise port in Texas. All the cruise ships are closed, are stopped. And we just had word yesterday that it looks like Carnival will begin sailing again in August. It's significant to us because almost 60% of our revenue at our port comes from the cruise business. The restaurants, retail reopened last week in a staggered opening. They were allowed to open with 25% capacity. The biggest shock was they opened our beaches. The governor opened our beaches for this past weekend. We're about 30 to 45 minutes from the city of Houston. We've got a market draw of over 7 million people. And on Saturday afternoon, we had over 200,000 cars that came across the causeway that connects Galveston Island to the mainland. And the numbers were overwhelming in terms of the amount of people that had that pent up, cooped up, wanted to get out feeling. And so they came to Galveston to enjoy the beaches. And it's created some really interesting dynamics with regard to having that type of an inflow in a community that's just starting the reopening, kind of the recovery process, if you would. Like Rod and Danielle, we kind of went to our toolbox and opened up. We really kind of try and focus through the GEDP on financial resources directly for the business community. Our economy is a little bit different. 94% of our businesses have fewer than 50 employees in Galveston. And so the hit that we've taken in the tourism, hospitality, retail sector has been immense. But we've been somewhat buffered because we have a significant amount where the county seat. We have 2 universities. We have a junior college. A good portion of our community, although they were working from home, they're still being paid. And so it's going to be interesting as we continue to dissect what the impacts from this event have been, because we haven't had a complete stoppage like so many communities have, where the entire economy has just been shuttered. As we go forward, we've got a host of lessons that we've learned through this event, and I think a lot of those are going to bode well for us as economic developers for future resources and tools. There are some things that have been done during this event that have never been done from a federal level, and we're working with a number of our national partners and others to try and ensure that these tools and resources stay in the game for future events for communities like ours that are vulnerable to catastrophic events and natural disasters. There, like all of you, tremendous collaboration in terms of information clearinghouses, sharing information. I think as much as we've got the webinar fatigue that Danielle talked about, there is an incredible information overload, that we have a very strong regional collaboration through our Houston Regional Economic Development Alliance. And so we made the call probably a month ago that we were going to defer to the Greater Houston Partnership. And thankfully, they took the helm of creating a regional database of all of the programs and tools and resources. And so we kind of stopped at the local level having to regurgitate or duplicate all of the different program announcements and things that were happening, and just started to share that regional database so that everybody could gain a little bit of sanity back, because we were just spinning wheels trying to be the first to get the information out to the business and the community in terms of how they could respond to this event. We're working on some creative new tools that have been developed as a result of this event and during this event over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And as you know, listen, I could probably ramble for 45 minutes on different things. So I'm looking forward to just having somewhat of a conversation and maybe talking about some things that are of interest to folks that are on the call today.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Again, you have so much perspective, I guess, because you've dealt with different kinds of disasters in the past. I've heard it said that, you know, you've been through one pandemic, you've been through one pandemic. Like each disaster has its own unique characteristics. We don't yet fully know what this virus is going to throw at us, but even with natural disasters, each one has a different character and impacts us in different ways. I'd like to start off by asking the three of you, what is the one single most important takeaway from this that you would want to share with other people, that surprised you, that changed the way you do business, the way you operate, that you really feel is like kind of a new best practice or rejuvenated or changed things for your organization that you would want to share with others? Go ahead, Danielle.
I think you're muted.
I hear you. I'm going to unmute you. Let's see. Are you able to unmute yourself? I just sent you an unmute request. Let's see if that'll work.
You want me to go?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead while Danielle figures out. Thanks, Rod.
Okay, now she got the audio problem. I don't. So I think for me, it's not really a new lesson. It's an old lesson reinforced, which is the power of partnerships and collaboration. I mean, we just simply could not do this separately. I think Jeff alluded to something that we saw a little bit of early on. Everybody was rushing to get information out to their various audiences, and sometimes it felt like a competition to see who could push the information out there the quickest. And that wasn't working for any of us. So we had to quickly, regroup, get together, and talk about, like I mentioned in my comments, let's decide who each of us are going to focus on, which subjects, which audiences, and that way we can do a better job of it. And we learned so much from working with these other groups, from the people that are on this community-wide call that I talked about, the things that they are doing that are addressing health issues and education issues and other things that I don't normally think about, but impact me greatly. So I think for me, it's just got to recommit to making sure that we are reaching out and working with others and collaborating as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. My comments were pretty much in parallel with that. I would say it was amazing to me, and I'll never underestimate it again, how much your partners and supporters want to be called on to help. So again, we have board members that are, leading the different banking institutions in our region. They're working 18-hour days trying to figure all of this stuff out. And we called on them and asked them to participate with us and help lead conversations. They were responding to our emails within minutes. They were online. They were helping lead the community. So never underestimate the willingness of your supporters to come to your side when needed. And also, just watching the community, also be aware that everybody's human, because I've seen people in very powerful leadership positions not know what to do or have their own moment of freaking out. And, from our internal team, I just said, guys, here's the deal. We can all freak out. We just can't all do it at the same time. Everybody gets their day.
I think from my vantage point, I think what I'm taking away from this is something that's still in development. And my biggest hope is that business recovery from catastrophic events is forever changed. We have worked a lot with our International Economic Development Council, with communities across the country, whether it's forest fires or floods. Arkansas just had a tornado a couple of weeks ago that came in and went right through the city. Hurricanes, and now because of COVID, I think now it's even more rational to talk about cyber terrorism and other things that weren't really on the radar. I always joke with people, talking about business preparedness is like trying to sell life insurance to a high school graduate. Folks don't want to talk about it. They don't have the time. I think what we've done is we flipped business recovery on its ear. What we knew before COVID was that business recovery is not a part of the federal framework. It's not a part of the Stafford Act. There are a couple of agencies that do tremendous work. The Small Business Administration has just done unbelievable things. It's all going to be evaluated and criticized and critiqued after the fact. But to see the way that the banks were utilized to get the dollars to the local level and let the banks work with the local businesses is something I hope that we carry forward for future events. The whole concept of business preparedness, the business continuity, we've initiated with another federal partner, a business resiliency center concept, to just try and take some of the lessons that are going to come out of this with a new national awareness of what business interruption really means, and use it to our advantage to improve the game, like they improved response after Katrina, because that was years of improvement in a very short period of time because of the lessons learned as a result of that event. And so I'm really kind of excited about where this may lead us as we go into future years, and hopefully some of these are going to carry through.
Great. Okay. Some really excellent points. I like the idea, Rod, as you said, that sometimes it's about listening as much as talking and consulting other organizations, the idea of collaboration. I think I heard from all of you. I know that's something that you certainly were talking about, Danielle. And I really think you're right that kind of shifting from a disaster response to being proactive going forward, like what can we take from this so that we build this resilience? Things are going to come at us. Maybe there'll be natural disasters, maybe there'll be economic, maybe it'll be another public health issue, but building that resilience ahead of time makes everybody stronger. I think that's really important. Just a reminder, we're getting some questions coming in, but I also just want to make sure that people recognize that they can ask their questions in the questions field, and they go to webinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I had a couple of questions about this one, actually, is how do you think site selection is going to change? I know the focus is really about protecting existing businesses, local businesses, but I've heard you guys talking also about site selection. What do you think might be some of the changes that, if any, that we see going forward?
I'll jump in. I think one of the aspects that may change is, I think, how communities are responding and how they've responded to this pandemic, and how prepared they are and how they emerge out of this may become just from our vantage point, a new component of site selection, in that it may end up being another question in terms of how resilient was your community, and how supportive was the local community, their financial and their non-financial tools. The community, I love what Rod said with regard to he's already doing incentives. Our community's not there yet because we don't know the exact toll from an ad valorem sales, hotel motel tax perspective. We've got some indicators on where we're going to be hit, but our city's doing proactive things with regard to public policies on signage and outdoor seating, and trying to work with the community to help the businesses reopen. So I think all of us are going to have the opportunity to be able to show how our communities responded and stood up with the business community. And maybe that will add some confidence to future site selection considerations.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome comments, Jeff. So instead of duplicating, I'll just add to that. We've put a lot of force and advocacy also into continued construction operations, which some communities have done a great job of. Some maybe not as much, but we've pushed on that very hard because we've got some big projects in the works. We've got a new soccer stadium coming online in a couple of years. And, the biggest thing that's going to crush us is if that grinds to a halt and we don't have product that we can actually market and leverage. So that's been a really big deal. And again, the use of technology, we took a shot and did a virtual fam tour. I think I talked to another colleague yesterday in the country on the East Coast, and they had done a virtual tour with Ireland. I mean, really, really creative work. And I do think that we're going to learn that you can experience quite a bit from a community using technology. And then, one of the things that we're so close to San Francisco, we spend a ton of time traveling down to San Francisco. Our CEO has been cold calling down there for a long time, but because of the proximity, it's been very convenient. We're even wondering if that's even necessary. And we really start to reserve our in-person visits and carving out a half a day on the train to, already vetted, already well-known entities.
Okay, thank you. Rod, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I want to agree with Jeff and say that I think risk aversion is going to become a growing area of interest for the companies that we're working with. It always has been, but now we've added a new component to that too. And I think one of the things that they will be looking at is not only how was the community prepared for something like this, but how did they respond to the individual businesses. And I recall I've been in my position here now for 3 years, and I recall meeting with one of our corporate headquarters companies, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. And we had I guess it was a little bit of a hurricane, the out, not anything like Jeff would experience. We get the outer portions of the hurricane, but still brings a lot of wind, and it's a lot of rain, very traumatic for us. But, the company executive looked at me and said, we kind of expected somebody to call us and ask us if we needed help. And that didn't happen. And I think people on the other side thought, well, they're so big, they're so self-sufficient. Why would they need our help? They could probably help us. But they wanted to know that what she was saying was that we cared about them, we were concerned about them. And that was a lesson I learned a year and a half ago that I didn't let go this time. We've been reaching out to all of our major employers and just saying, hey, is there anything we can do to help you? We care about you. You're important to us. Anything at all, even the littlest thing that we can do, we'd like to help you with. And that's been very, very well received.
That's a really interesting point, actually. And whether it's site selection or working in workforce or business recovery and retention, the idea of asking people for things. I mean, all of you who spoke about this new element of collaboration, but also that people have stepped up, whether it's banks or employers, they're willing to help. They care about the communities they live in. They have a personal as well as a professional stake in making sure that this continues, that we're able to attract new investment, retain local businesses. Maybe that's an interesting change to look at is sometimes going out and asking them. An interesting point, Rod, that they were waiting for someone to call and say something. So I think that's a really good takeaway. What about, since we're talking about things that might be more the importance of digital, in terms of your websites, in terms of other digital tools, VR headsets maybe for fam tours, what are some of the things that maybe need to change in terms of the practice of economic development to make sure that investors and businesses have access to do that research or analysis in different ways? Anything that you guys have been thinking about or that you've found that you're using that's particularly important?
Well, I know we want to beef up our resources that are available online so that the visitor to our website it can be a little more self-serve in terms of getting the information that they need. And I think that all of those things that you mentioned are on the table. We're looking at the VR. We're looking at who we need 2 or 3 drone operators. So if we need to fly over a building or a site, we need to have somebody available right now. All these things that we're looking at, we're trying to anticipate. Nobody knows that for sure, but we have to be ready for it just in case. And I think that site select, I think the process itself is going to continue much as it has, but with use of new tools, and we have to adapt to those tools and technologies, and we'll be catching up. In my case, we're not there yet.
Okay.
In the interim, and I'm hoping we can get this adopted more widely going forward, we started using Slack to communicate with all of our economic development practitioners in the region, because information is moving so fast and so quickly. Sending them another email or another e-newsletter isn't getting the information where it needs to be. So we started just posting messages and links in Slack to useful information, articles, things we want them to post, recordings of great webinars that they should check out. When we update our economic indicators report about twice a week, we immediately post that in Slack so they've got it at their fingertips. And that's been a really interesting new way to communicate with folks. It's pretty instantaneous.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's I'm gonna come from a little bit different angle, and I already told Melissa that one of my greatest assets is proving my ignorance. So you all are going to benefit from that now. After Hurricane Ike, we had gone along the coast after Katrina and developed some relationships. After Hurricane Ike, Brent Warr, who was the mayor of Gulfport, Mississippi, flew his administrative team to Galveston. This was within 2 days of the storm, and brought them just to offer some relief to our city management team, if you would. And we were walking down the hallway, and he pulled me aside and he said, "Jeff, I want you to remember one thing I told you a year ago." He said, "What we experienced in Mississippi, we think you're going to experience, and that is industries and economic sectors, excuse me, that were going down before the storm pretty much disappeared after the event. And economic sectors that were growing going into the event grew exponentially after the fact." And we saw that happen in Galveston after Hurricane Ike. And so part of our executive leadership, we've been thinking about our recovery and how we emerge from this event. And so our initiatives in blending emerging technology with business continuity are going ahead full steam. And we're blessed in that with Texas A&M University at Galveston, it's one of only 6 maritime training academies in the country that's here in Galveston. With the University of Texas Medical Branch, it's one of only 2 national labs dedicated to biodefense and bioterrorism. And so we're looking at technologies driving us forward and quite frankly, potentially creating a new economic sector for Galveston as it relates to things that range from regional assets from the Johnson Space Center, space-related technologies, to maritime, environmental, biotech, life sciences, autonomous technologies, kind of the breadbasket of what's available within our region. And thinking about how we take the stories of UTMB, which has been conducting, last week, the president of UTMB shared with us that they were conducting 2,000 telemedicine visits a day over the course of the last week to 2 weeks. So we've got some examples of where technology was actually integrated into the COVID response. And our thought is we're going to try and ride that out and use that as an opportunity for growth in new sectors for Galveston.
So that's really interesting. What I'm hearing is both the technology that we're using, whether it's on your website, like you said, Rod, or the tools like Slack and the tools that we might have on our website in order to improve communication and facilitate analysis, but also tech as a focus, an industry focus that we're potentially going to see booming post-COVID because we've all come to rely on it, whether it's because our kids are learning online or we're having to do meetings with VR headsets that we never had to do before. So the place of technology in our daily lives, but also as a focus of economic development is important. And you mentioned both telemedicine, we talked about VR. Do you think face-to-face meetings are a thing of the past? Do you think that we're going to be doing more and more people working from home, of doing virtual visits, of teleconferences? How would that shift the site selection process?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I think that's going to be one of the things that we watch. I think the whole CRE market, in terms of folks that maybe were looking at 100,000 square foot buildings, maybe saying, you know what, the telecommuting worked. Maybe we don't need 100,000 square feet. For a coastal community like Galveston, we've got 4 or 5 different demographic sects that use Galveston in terms of commuter employees, tourists, workers, students. We're actually seeing an uptake in terms of people that are wanting to come and have their toes in the sand. You know, what used to be a Saturday, Sunday visit to the beach is now becoming a Thursday to maybe a Tuesday, and they're able to, through their laptop or technology, telecommute. And so I think everything from space requirements to the social distancing and how that's going to parlay into the future is something that we're all going to kind of watch and monitor to see what the actual impacts are, whether it's short-term memory loss and people forget about it and a year from now nobody's thinking about it, or whether it actually transcends into the industry sectors.
Any other thoughts about that? One of the things that I guess I was wondering as I look back to, if you're watching television or seeing things happening, is those open plan offices now seem like a public health nightmare. Like the face of what that has to look like. I have a daughter in engineering and university, looking at what those labs are. How do we let students go back to classes? How do we let people go back to offices, facilities, manufacturing? How do we balance the economic and the public health, I guess, is like part of what everybody's talking about in different ways. I think work just may have to look a little bit different going forward, and that certainly is going to impact site selection.
Yeah, I was thinking that when Jeff was talking, that they might need less people in a building because of telecommuting, but they might need more space because everybody now has to be 6 feet apart. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the cubicle concept and the shared workspaces that you see now are probably going to be a thing of the past for most companies.
Right.
And so that's...
It may shift
as well, because you need a different, as you say, different kind of space if you can't put everyone in one big open plan office anymore.
Right.
It may shift too, based on some of Rod's earlier comments. It may shift our incentive policies. We may have to start thinking about incentivizing higher technology within buildings. And there was an article I read this morning about new buildings and the fact that you're going to have keyless entries and sanitation stations and things that help to kind of keep people from having to touch everything they touch when they go into an office setting. And so it may become a site selection thing where we have to think about local incentives like we did for the green, in terms of some of the incentives and credits that are available for more sustainable technologies within buildings and LEED certified type activities. That may become something we have to think about from the local level to help businesses do that.
Yeah.
And may potentially offer an advantage to kind of areas outside of large metro areas. I mean, having to crowd everyone into elevators to go up into massive skyscrapers just seems a little bit less appealing than having an area outside of a metro area that's a little bit wider spaces.
My jury's still out on it, but we're having quite a bit of conversations on what kind of impact this is going to have on transit. Are people going to want to get on trains? Are they going to want to mass commute? And I think exactly in tune with what you were just saying, Melissa, You know, are they going to want to do that cramming, or are they going to look for locations where they can be a little bit more spread out? Is it going to continue to advance the car culture? And I think it's going to, you know, continue to exponentially now increase the drive and need for broadband, 5G, all of those things. So we're having a lot of conversations internally on those infrastructure pieces, because I think a lot of people have figured out, you know, if you're working from home right now, there's a lot of things that you can modify, and you can do, you know, offices can do different shifts, and they can do all these things to keep people from being too close to each other. If you're working from home and your internet sucks, it's probably about the most frustrating thing in the world, and that's what's going to get you, get in the way of productivity and your ability to plug in. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch, and hopefully we'll be smart enough to be just with or just ahead of the curve and be well positioned.
And one of the other things along that line that we're doing, Danielle, is advising our communities to be prepared for a digital economy in the way that they haven't been in the past. And I mean, you know, everything from adopting smart technologies in their infrastructure to being able to easily pay your cable bill online. You know, I don't even want the lady at CVS to hand me the clipboard to put my signature on there anymore, right? So, you know, people don't want to touch things. So we've got to be prepared to do that digitally. And I think most of our communities are way behind in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think the new focus that we've had, because we're focused on business, protecting our local businesses, our retailers, our restaurants, our manufacturing facilities, our service providers, do you think that focus on business retention is something that's going to endure? Or do you think that's going to go back? We're going to go back to just focusing on investment attraction. Do you see your organization adding that as more of a priority, if it isn't already?
We were already there. I mean, so I think it just reinforces that the path that we started to go down was probably the correct one, and one that we'll continue to work towards.
Okay. That's good.
It's a place to double down on right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, Alyssa, from a technology side, you know, you've been an industry leader for years with GIS planning, and with the product that you unveiled with the Prospector, it really hits upon an issue that we've seen over the years, which is we've been in a number of meetings, and we ask local economic development organizations or chambers, do you have a comprehensive listing of your business base? And, you know, you talk about communication, Rod. The issue is it's not so much even having the listing, but do you have a communication portal to be able to communicate with them during times like this? And so I think we're going to see some even more enhanced technology. And we've actually partnered with a software producer that will create an opportunity to have real-time tracking for business interruption and financial impacts, so that, you know, the surveys are awesome and we're all doing them. But for an area like ours, where we can break it down to districts or areas of the island that are being impacted more significantly, I think we're going to see potentially more technology with regard to connecting existing business or business retention efforts. Whether or not that stays, I think so much of it is in the attraction and expansion diversification side. I think this is probably going to make people think a little bit more about doing the thing that Rod talked about in terms of really building that relationship with your existing business community, because the fact remains 80% of your new jobs are going to come from businesses within your community, like they've said for years through all of the training and the discussions that we've had.
Yeah, that's a really important point. One of the things that I've heard from some of the economic development clients that I've spoken to over the past number of weeks is they're doing surveys, and that's really important because you want to know what your businesses need from you right now. But sometimes the businesses, I guess as the weeks have gone on and more surveys have gone out, they feel a little frustrated. They want to see what's happening as a result of the survey data. They want to feel heard. They want to feel supported. So they want to see kind of practical or concrete things that are being done with the things that we've learned in those surveys. So really important thing. It's one thing to ask questions. It's another thing to then generate solutions as a result of the data we know. So just this brings us to the end of our hour. I'm going to end off with one question. I'd like to know, what is the first thing all of you are going to do when you get back to your actual offices? Do you have anything in mind? Is there something you've missed or something that you really just, well, as soon as I go back, I'm going to? Any thoughts?
I'll throw, well, I'm going to water my plant, assuming it's doing okay.
Okay.
But in seriousness, I actually, if I could take a different spin on that, I wanted to give a quick plug today because it's Economic Development Week. So as soon as I'm off the phone here today, I'm going to make sure that my team and everybody are posting on social media and putting videos out promoting Economic Development Week. It's a great way to take advantage of the fact that we already celebrate economic developers. And, you know, while we certainly don't want to be tone deaf, it's a great time to raise awareness on the importance of the people doing this work. And I'll water my plant.
Okay, good answer. Any other thoughts, Rod or Jeff? What is on your priority list when you're able to get back?
All I have to do is I have to refill the candy jar because they count on me to provide the chocolate. So.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'm the odd man out. I've been in my office since this whole thing started.
Okay.
I'm actually inside of a building that's owned by UTMB, but I manage the technology incubator for them. So all of the UTMB employees have been working from home. So I've been able to self-quarantine in my office during this whole time. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a vacation when all the other people come back, because I've actually started to enjoy being an introvert and working alone. So I'm going to take a day off.
Oh, that's crazy. A day off. What? I love
The number of vacation requests are going to be exponential because even though people are at home, I've never been more tired. I think in my career, I've never felt more taxed on a day-to-day basis. I'm grateful for it and I'm thrilled to do the work. But I think everyone out there would echo how challenging it has been. It is hard work to do this during this.
It really is.
Yep.
I think, as you pointed out, that it's Economic Development Week, and I think it's really important that most of the time people don't really know what economic developers actually do anyway. And I feel like if there are any silver linings out of these experiences of the last few weeks, is that people suddenly realize how critical it is that there is an organization in their community that is supporting local businesses, that is providing information, aggregating resources, attracting new jobs, stimulating area economy. So thank you all for the work that you do for your communities. Thank you for speaking with us today. Thank you to the many, many people. We had overwhelming numbers for today's webinar. I appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy days. I wish everyone good health and safety and prosperity. And thank you again for being with us today. Take care. I will include everyone's contact information in the follow-up email. So if you want to reach out to Jeff or Danielle or Rod, you'll be able to do that. So thank you all. I wish you a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.